Good afternoon, Namaskar. We have 25 minutes and I'm going to share with you the Storm the Norm method. My experience has been really mostly with corporates. Whenever large organizations have looked for innovation, whether it's product innovation, process innovation, or business model innovation, they need an innovation facilitator to come in to help them go through the process of finding that breakthrough, the next thing that could become the norm. So that's what I've been doing, and now in the last couple of years also starting to work with startups, because we realized that the way the startups have been dealing with innovation has been very, very different. Surely there has been a lot of chatter about how a lot of chatter around how startups deal with innovation. We say corporates can learn a lot from startups. Surely, corporates are also pretty impressed by how startups are very resourceful, very irreverent, very nimble, etc., etc. Also, we've now realized that when it comes to discipline to scale, after you've been through the couple of first stages of setting up your new venture, startups can learn from the large corporates who have shown a certain kind of discipline to scale, and that's where a lot of startups have floundered. And therefore, there was a need to put together a process of innovation that takes the best from both worlds, the startups as well as the large corporates. And that's what we did with Storm the Norm. The book's doing really well. It's in its 7th print run in a year and a half, and has recently been stamped with a bestseller thing. And actually, the book's available outside. If you want, you can pick up a copy. So the book has 20 stories. 20 stories of organizations that stormed the norms of their industries. They came in, challenged the current paradigms, and created something new. They really stormed the norms. And the way we've chosen these stories, it's my business partner, Anisha Motwani, who's the author of the book, and I created the Storm the Norm method. So we kind of collaborated on the book. There are 3 kinds of organizations we've chosen, for the book. One are the legacy old businesses that have endured. Businesses that are almost 100 years old. The Times of India of the world, the Raymonds of the world, etc. And these are all Indian stories, by the way. That's what we want to pick up. Indian stories, when we say, not just Indian businesses, but also MNCs that have succeeded in India. The second variety or second category of organizations that we picked up were the challenger organizations. These have not been traditional leaders, but came in and challenged the leader and succeeded. And the third variety is the new age businesses, whether it's the PVRs of the world or Make My Trips of the world and stuff like that. So those are the kind of organizations we picked up because we wanted to look at some of the newer startups and how they deal with innovation. So that's what I'm going to talk. So what I will do in the next 22 odd minutes that I have is take you through the 5 stages of the Storm the Norm method as to if an organization were to go about in storming the norms of their industry by design, what do they do? So those are the 5 stages. Obviously, this is just the top level, which is the stages. If an organization really wants to do it, there is a whole suite of tools and techniques, etc., of going through the stage. But let's just go through the stages quickly. All right, this was the first interesting insight that when we took a perspective building step back, there's a method to the magic, is what we realize. And what is that method? While these organizations were different, but the way they went about storming the norms, whether by design or unwittingly, there was a pattern in there. And we said, what's that pattern? That's what we picked up. So this is the world that we are used to, right? And that we see. What do you see here? If you look at this map and tell me what you see here, I would like some response. India is upside down. Okay, so this is what happens. You go and make a presentation in Mongolia, they'll say Mongolia is upside down. We notice only what we want to notice. Selective perception. No, but that's right. I mean, when we give a printout of a map like this to people, they instinctively turn it around. And they say this, when they turn it around, they say the words are now upside down. And they say there's something wrong with your map. What's wrong? It's the world is too used to talking about right and wrong. I mean, we live in binaries. We live in black and white. In fact, our schools have done enough to tell us that there's only one right answer. And everything else is wrong. If someone shows a map like this, in fact, if you go and were to reproduce a map like this in your exam, geography exam, you'll get a 0. You say, this person doesn't even know what the world looks like. Because we all know what the world map looks like, right? There's the North America, there's South America, there's Africa here, there's Europe here, there's India there. I mean, you'll obviously notice your own country. And then there is your Australia down under. That's the map. And if someone changes it, it's wrong. Actually, there's nothing wrong with a map like this. You're just standing on the North Pole and looking down. You know, it's just the perspective that has changed. The moment you change the perspective, the world seems to have changed. We found this map in a very interesting place, in an Australian atlas. And there was something very interesting written under the map in small print. I'll read that out for you because that points to a very interesting mindset. The only thing that's wrong is that you'll get a 0 and the geography teacher will not like it, but there's nothing wrong with the map that looks like that. You know, the thing is, what have we taken for granted for too long? You know, things that we've taken for granted for too long have actually started to seem like facts. What if I were to tell you that the current map is an opinion, not a fact? The problem is, if it's been handed over to you as a fact, you are also told that it can't be challenged. What if I were to tell you that most of the things in the world that you've received as secondary information can be questioned, can be challenged? That's something we usually don't do because we all go to the factory model of schools, and then that factory model of schools applies to the factory model of the corporate world or the startup world, and we get a lot of people who just have learned to learn from secondary sources. So that's the problem with the world today. So the first stage of storm the norm process is what we call the stale, stagnant market. So can I use this? Does this work? Oh wow, this works. So I'll stand here then. So stale, stagnant markets. You know, it's very interesting. It all starts with staleness. What does stale market mean? Actually, if you ask an incumbent who's been there in the market for very long, he'll say it's normal. But an outsider comes in and feels the staleness. You know, it's like you don't see the dirt in your own home. You don't feel the staleness in your own home. When someone else walks in and say, oh, something wrong. You know, it's like that cab parked outside, been waiting for you, and you get in and say, oh, stuffy. Then you open the window panes. But the person sitting inside doesn't feel the staleness. That's what happens to incumbents who've been around for too long in an industry. What happens typically, usually, is that you start to see commoditized off. There are signs. There are signs that tell you there's staleness that's set in the market. One is commoditized offerings. All offerings start to look the same. They are mindless operations. Too many SOPs. Wafer-thin margins. And also a set of incumbents or the whole the ecosystem entities that have resigned to their fate, saying, no, it's a price-sensitive market, nothing else works, we've tried a lot of things, but this is all that is, and etc., etc., etc. So when you hear discourse like this, you know you are in a stale market. And this kind of a situation is ready for a stormer to arrive. Now, the stormer could be an incumbent too. I'm not saying stormers only come from outside. They usually do, by the way. But if an incumbent can turn into a stormer, it's amazing. But they usually don't, because they don't see what an outsider is able to see. We tell an interesting story about why incumbents aren't able to see what outsiders can. It's a children's story that explains the point well. There's a pond. And the pond ecosystem has the flora and fauna of the pond. You know, there are the plants, and there are the fish, and there's a frog, and everything else. So these frogs, every once in a while, they jump out of the pond, and they do what they do. They're being amphibians. They just hop around, jump around, and they come back into the water. And they come back with a lot of very interesting stories about this world outside water. And the fish that's never been out of water listens to these stories with amazing attention, saying, wow, that must be a fascinating world you go to, frog. Now, this goes on for a long time. till one day a baby fish that hasn't been normed yet asks a very naive but a very fresh and an interesting question. The baby fish says, frog, when you go out of water, you see trees, you see animals, you see human beings, you see air, you see whatever, birds. That must be amazing. But you keep saying when we go out of water, we see this, we see that. But what's water? Now the frog doesn't know how to tell fish what water is. How do you tell fish what water is? If anyone must know water, it's the fish. You're born in water, lives in water, will die in water. If there has to be a PhD in water, it should be the fish, right? But then the frogs realize something very interesting. That in order to know water completely, one surely must know water, but you also must know no water. So the question we ask is it really possible to really completely know your paradigm from within it? You've been a part of the system, you've been breathing the culture of that paradigm. To be able to first know it completely from within it and to be able to conceive the next, not easy. So the question again and again we ask ourselves, whichever industry we work in, and I'll ask all of you, whichever industry you're working in, if you are fish, what's your water? What's all pervasive? What's critical to your existence, but you don't sense it? But an outsider will come and sense it. So that is what happens when incumbents are there, they've resigned to the fate, and a stormer walks in. What does a stormer do? This is the second stage. A stormer spots the suboptimal. What does suboptimal mean? Actually, there's something very interesting. Innovation is not just about getting answers to your current questions. We spend too long finding answers to the same old questions that we've been looking for. Innovation is also about discovering new questions. The question is, what question have we not asked yet? How do you get answers to questions you ask? How about answers to questions that you haven't asked yet? Ask a new question, and answers are often staring at you. We live in a world of answers. We live in a world where Google exists. Discover a new question and you'll find answers, more answers than you can deal with. So this is what a stormer does, spots the suboptimal, either at solution level or tracks of thinking level or at mental model level. The deeper you go, the more disproportionate the impact is. Small shift leads to a disproportionate impact. But it's not easy to look beyond manifestation or solutions, because solutions exist in the world. This is a solution, which is a result of a lot of interesting thinking and evolution over the years. This bottle that is in our hands has been optimized over the years as a solution. This is a solution that's got optimized after a lot of iteration over the years. How do you understand the thinking behind it? How do you see suboptimality in the thinking behind this? Forensic experts do it really well, but we in the business world haven't realized how, because they have no other option, by the way, forensic experts. They see something that has happened, a crime that's been committed. Now they have to go look at that and try and deduce and get to what might have led to this and what are the various ways someone could have reached this situation. We in business world don't do that. It's a very theoretical process. So you look back. The deeper you go, the more disproportionate the response is. Why is the world kind of talking so much about blockchains? Because we've all realized that that is a shift not at a very superficial surface level, but a deeper level. The way the world has started to saying that there is no central clearing authority, there is no central ledger, but distributed ledger. And the amazing new thought of distributed consensus. When you say it like that, you could apply it to any industry, not just fintech. We all realize it. Now, that's a deeper level shift. And now, once this suboptimal has been spotted, now let's look at some examples. Look at the examples of these organizations that actually, they were erstwhile leaders, but they lost out because they were incumbents. We know Sony missed MP3. Biggest beverage brands in the world missed energy drinks. It wasn't Coke and Pepsi that actually unlocked that amazing opportunity. It was Red Bull. Kodak missed digital. We all know about what Airbnb and Uber have done. But the biggest example really is from an industry that attracts the most expensive talent in the world, banking. Banks have missed the last 3 disruptions in banking. Mutual funds did not come from banks. Microcredit as a concept did not come from your conventional banks. It came from Grameen Bank, which is not your usual bank. Cryptocurrencies as a concept did not come from banks. In fact, they resisted it. They challenged it. They didn't like it when it came. Now they've realized that there's no other option. We'll have to join the bandwagon. You might hate bitcoins, but you realize the power of blockchains or hash graphs. Before you could say blockchains, hash graphs are here. So things are changing very, very quickly. Now, these were all incumbents who lost out.